Cooking with Simon!
Hey, this is Simon from Epic Season, and today I'm going to show you how to make your own chocolate. If you really want to try and impress your true love this Valentine's Day, or even have just wondered about the basic processes of chocolate, then stick around and I'll show you how it's done. So to start our chocolate adventure, we have to go back to the beginning of chocolate. Theobroma cacao has been cultivated for at least 3 millennia in Central and South America, mainly by Mesoamericans who used to brew it into a bitter drink they called zilcatel, best translated as bitter water. Great stuff if you like to drink motor oil. But hey, I won't hold it against you. But by the 15th century, the Aztecs gained control of a large part of Mesoamerica and adopted cocoa into their culture. They associated chocolate with their goddess of fertility, and often used chocolate beverages as a sacred offering to her. When Cortez arrived and smashed all the loving daylights out of them, he took the cocoa beans back to the European mainland. And from this, most of the processes of cocoa were developed. Sugar and milk were added to sweeten and fatten the confection, but it wasn't until the 19th century when a certain Briton John Cadbury invented a mixing process to make solid chocolate. So, today for a process, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing 1. Blending, 2. Conching and refining, 3. Tempering, 4. Molding, 5. Eating. So what we're going to do today is we're actually not going to use a regular recipe, but we're going to use some percentages to figure out our cocoa. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 50% cocoa butter, 25% cocoa powder, 20% sugar, and 5% milk powder, then a little pinch of salt. So why we're not actually using a regular recipe today is because every single chocolate mold is a little bit different. I measured out mine at about 50 milliliters per little thing here. I've got 3 of those. That's 150 milliliters. And a milliliter equals 1 gram by weight. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to weigh out all of my ingredients with this handy dandy thing. It's amazing. It's called a scale. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out how much it is. I usually go a little bit above the amount that I'm figuring out. So if it's 150 grams, I'm actually going to go with about 200 grams just because there's a lot that's lost in the measure. So I'm going to start out with my cocoa butter here. And just figure that out. If it's 50%, that's going to be 100 grams here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to stick this cocoa butter right on top of a double boiler. Now you can use metal for this, but I like to personally use what's called melamine just because it holds the heat just a little bit better. Just let that melt. There's the cocoa powder. That's about 50 grams. Now we're going to put in the sugar. I'm going to weigh that one out. So now we're just going to put a little bit of salt in there. That's going to make it so it's a little bit less bitter in the end. Now we're just going to put it onto a flexible mat and sift it on there. It's really important that you do this because you want to make sure that everything is really fine, and sometimes there are big chunks in there, as you'll see in just a second. Just give it a little time. It doesn't take too long. And there is the cocoa. So now what we're going to do is we're going to integrate our cocoa powder mixture into the cocoa butter. So now that it's all blended, just keep stirring it on top to make sure that all of the fat in the cocoa butter is melted. Just keep doing this. You'll need to do it for about a couple more minutes. So now that we've got this chocolate blended, it basically looks like chocolate. You could say, hey, it's basically done. But if you taste it, it's going to taste really good, but it's really grainy. And it could be a little bit better in flavor. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to do some both refining and conching. Basically what that means is we're going to try and work this so that all those little particles of cocoa get really small and really small. And what we're also going to be doing is we're also going to be letting a lot of the moisture out of it, because as we work it, the moisture will fly up into the air and we're going to get a little bit more of the cocoa flavor that's in there. Because there's actually a lot of water already in this. We could work it ourselves, but I'm honestly too lazy for that. So what we're actually going to use is we're going to use our stand mixer. So I've got my cocoa here. I'm just going to put it right into the stand mixer bowl. So now that we've got our chocolate in our mixer bowl over here, we've got an issue. When we actually work this, it'll actually harden up. So what we have to do is we have to try and give a little bit of heat to this to make sure that it stays. What you could use is you could use a heating pad if you've got one. I don't have a heating pad, so all I've got here is just a pillowcase, and in that I'm going to put some chickpeas and stick it in the microwave for a couple of minutes. So now that we've got this nice and warm, I just stuck it in the microwave for a couple of minutes. It's good to note that you don't actually want to stick it in for more than 2 minutes, or it'll make your whole house smell like burnt popcorn. But what you want to do is you want to stick this in and get it up nice and tight, and then take a nice big towel like this and slide that underneath. Make sure it's kind of level. And then just stick this baby right in there. Make sure it can push up a little bit. I'm going to stick something else underneath it actually. And like that. That way it sticks up a little bit. You want to get this mixer bowl a little bit higher than it's supposed to be. That way it really grinds down at the bottom. So now that we've got that, we're just going to create a little bit of insulation here. And turn it on to 2. And grab this towel. Pull it up over top. Okay. So now that we've got that all set up, we're going to keep it there for 25 minutes. After that 25 minutes is up, we're going to give this mixer a little bit of a rest because we don't want to overwork it. So now that we're done with the conching phase, I'm just keeping it in some hot water over here in a crock pot to make sure that it stays melted. We want it to be completely melted at first. Basically, chocolate is made up of a bunch of fat. And these fats form crystals, and each one of these crystals, there are different types, and each one have different characteristics. There's number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and number 6 that we know of. And all of these, if you go from the top to the bottom, they increase in a melting temperature. So you got 63 with type 1 and 97 for type 6. So tempering is basically saying, hey, I want a really good and firm snap for my chocolate. So I want to try and isolate as many of the type 5 crystals as possible. That's what's really considered the best chocolate. It's when it's glossy, it's firm, and it snaps. And at 93 degrees it also melts in your mouth, but not too quickly. So tempering is just, we want to isolate that. So what we're going to do at first is we're actually going to take our chocolate over here. That's nice and hot. It's probably at, let's see here, around, I'd say, 130 degrees. It's nice and hot. We're just going to pour that out onto the table. I've got a marble slab here because it really helps to pull the heat out of the chocolate. It's used in most candy making and stuff like that. If you don't have a marble slab, that's fine. But what you do need is you need a bench scraper. I've got one here that I picked up over at the local store, and I got it for $4, and I love this thing. All that you have to do is you just have to twist it and work it. You're gonna just keep working that chocolate, try and get it into, it may look really messy right now, but you're actually cooling down this really quickly. And by agitating it like this, you're forming as many crystals as soon as they can be. So you're not going to be getting any of the type 1, type 2, or type 3. You're just going to be getting the type 4 and type 5 crystals. Now that it's really thick, you can see that we've got a lot of those crystals formed. So what we're going to do is we're going to just keep working it just a little bit more until it looks almost dry. So now that we've got a nice big mass here, you can see it's pretty dry. And if you were to pick it up, it's pretty crumbly too. So we know that it's definitely hardening up, but it's not too cold, and that's a good thing. Because if it was really cold, that means that we would have made a lot of those smaller type crystals. And seeing it's still warm, we haven't, so that's great. Now that it looks pretty dry, we're just going to put it back into our mixing bowl over here. And the great thing about this bowl here is it actually still holds quite a bit of the heat. So you're going to notice that once you get it in there, it's going to start melting a little bit. Just stir it as much as possible. Now remember, if you remember the chart, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to isolate those type 5 crystals. And what we have to do is we just have to apply a little bit of heat. And there's already heat in this bowl because it holds its heat really well. So I'm just working it in here. It's going to melt, the type 4 crystals are going to melt, so it's going to be a little bit looser, but just keep on agitating it until it doesn't look shiny. So it's actually at 89 degrees right now, so we're going to keep working it. And if you want to raise the heat at all, just stick it a little bit in this water. Not too much, just for like maybe 15 seconds. And then take it right back out again. Start working, just to get that little bit of heat. You're only trying to raise it by a few degrees here. Remember, at 93 degrees, you just have to start all over again. So now I've been working it for a few minutes. It doesn't look nearly as glossy as it used to look, which is great because I've been keeping it around 88 degrees, which is great for forming the number 5 fat crystals. So now we're ready to move on to the next step, and it's really close, so you gotta work quickly here. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna take our spatula and take our chocolate here and push it down in there. Make sure it's nice and even. You don't have to work out too much. And then just take our dough scraper here and pull it back. Look at how beautiful that looks. And just let this rest for a little bit and you've made your own chocolate. So after the chocolate has rested completely, so it's really hard, just pop them out of their molds and they're ready to eat. The best thing to tell if you've tempered the chocolate right is just to take a piece here. It's nice and shiny. It's got a few things wrong with it, but just nice good snap there. Chocolate making definitely isn't an easy process, but with a little work you'll be able to come up with a great product. Next time you bite into a piece of chocolate from the store, you'll never see it in the same way. Thank you for watching Cooking with Simon. Hope to see you soon.